Market, right? And we'll talk about that. There's plenty to cover, and we'll get you all the action over the next 20 minutes. And of course, the movers and shakers, all the headline makers, and all the corporate commentary. But first up, the action itself. So let's quickly look at what happened today. I call it a very skewed market, and that's because of the kind of contribution coming in from banks and the underperformance from a lot of the other sides of the market, pockets of the market. So let's actually pull up the final tally and tell you what went on. The Bank Nifty, one of those rare days where you see the Bank Nifty rallying all the way 2% and the Nifty still ending flat. Let's see if we can get both of these. Yeah, so the contrast is very clear. Big move in one of the biggest sides of the market, that's the Bank Nifty, and yet the Nifty underperformed. So why is that? Pull up the Nifty contribution chart and the answer is going to come through. Because apart from a few stocks on the technology side and these large banks that we'll talk more about as we go on, a lot of the other pockets of the market were simply not working out. They were selling in auto stocks, they were selling in a lot of consumer names. Even some of the other big boys like L&T and Reliance, they didn't contribute. So basically it was a very narrow move and largely a move in banks, but a move nonetheless that you can't ignore. The other point was the mid-cap market. Look at the ending on the mid-cap index. It's a whole 1% cut. So Nigel, that's why I'm saying it's a tale of several markets rolled into one today.
Well, that's right. And the Nifty Bank, it did very, very well. Yeah. And it had that element of weekly expiry as well that played out. And that's why in the final hour of trade, it got a little bit volatile. But otherwise, it was a good trading session out there. From the Nifty pack itself, actually, though the Nifty Bank did very, very well, you had a couple of these stocks that were underperformers. Case in point being a Titan. You had L&T that was under pressure, Maruti as well as Bharti Airtel. So these were some of the big losers. So that's what restricted Nifty's up move in today's trading session. And that's why, in fact, the Nifty is under pressure in spite of its largest component. That's the banking names doing quite well. The advanced decline ratio, that tells you why your portfolios may not be looking too good at the end of the trading session. Because all through trade, you had almost, for the entire session, the number of stocks declining were more than the number of stocks that were advancing. And the good news, Surbi, is that you're not going to wake up to any negative cues because the US markets, both the bond as well as the equity market, well, they are shut overnight. So no shocker coming in overnight.
Absolutely. So it's going to be quiet, at least on the equity front. Of course, oil, by the way, oil prices are still very elevated, and that remained a watch point today. Brent has been trading above $85 a barrel. Let's tell you about today's lineup and all that we have in store for you. We'll start off with the key movers and shakers of the day. Vivek will bring us the lowdown as always. Then we talk about the stock of the day, and that was Indus Towers. We'll tell you all about the mega block trades that were taking place around Indus Towers. Then, of course, we get to D-Street Chatter. Nimesh is going to tell us why Shelley Engineering Plastics was buzzing and why that was an interesting stock to look at today. Last but not the least, we'll dive into all the key events to watch out in tomorrow's trading session. But first, the movers and shakers. And like I said, it's stocks going all over the place on that screen today. Vivek with the latest. Vivek, over to you.
Well, thank you so much for that. Like you encapsulated, just at the start of the show about how exactly, it was the banking pack that outperformed, even though the Nifty ended quite flat. Just have a look at the banking pack today and the top stocks. It was actually the private banks that did very, very well. Axis Bank, HDFC, ICICI, especially in the last stock, quite a bit of volatility, but all of them managed to end with strong gains. The next set of stocks, from the broader end of the markets that did very well was the fertilizer pack. Hopes of, GST rate cut or something that aided the up move, and throughout the trading session, they built onto the gains, and this is after a couple of days of good trading sessions as far as the fertilizer pack was concerned. Have a look at RCF, Chambal, Fact, all of these names doing very well in the session today. The other set of commodity stocks that did quite well was the sugar pack. Now, despite an overall slightly muted set of market where advanced decline was weak, have a look at some of the moves that you're seeing as far as the sugar pack was concerned. Balrampur, Chini, Sri Renuka, EID Parry up 11% in the session today. One more stock on the radar, this was Sansera Engineering. There was a large block, but it was a clean out trade from a strategic investor. And after that, the stock ended higher in today's trading session. Sansera Engineering, almost 5% higher, cooling off a little bit after the opening highs. The next stock was Ami Organics. Despite the company doing a QIP at a discount to yesterday's closing, despite that, the stock ended higher today, given the fact that there will be debt reduction is something that the market liked. On the other hand, some of the stocks or some of the sectors that saw quite a bit of selling pressure, one sector especially was the realty pack. The entire realty pack today, barring couple of names, saw quite a bit of profit booking, Soba, Brigade, Prestige. In fact, amongst the top 10 losers as far as the NSE 500 was concerned, 5 to 6 of them were from the real estate space itself. The other stock on the radar is ZF Commercial. There was a promoter selling, WAPCO selling almost 5%. Stock ended low by 6% today. And lastly, have a look at the capital goods space today. After a while today, the entire pack saw quite a bit of selling pressure, profit booking seen at elevated levels. Amongst the top drags as far as the Nifty was concerned was L&T, but even the other names like Siemens, Cummins, Kalpataru, KEC, all of them too saw quite a bit of selling pressure today.
Okay, all right. Thanks a lot for that, Vivek. Well, let's welcome our guests. We have Mayuresh Joshi, Head of Equity Research at William O'Neill, and Shrikant Chauhan of Kotak Securities, who joins us. Hi, gentlemen. Thanks a lot for joining in. Well, Shrikant, what do you make of the move on the Nifty Bank? You know, we had Gautam Shah, who joined us just yesterday, and he was saying that the Nifty Bank is well placed to rally 10,000 points from 50,000 to 60,000 odd. And in a couple of sessions, we've already done 15% of that move. Where's the Nifty Bank headed?
Yeah, good evening, Nigel. I think, see, in the medium to long term, yes, definitely we can see the rally of maybe 5 to 10,000 points. But in the near term, I am of the view that based on the overall setup of last 10 days, I mean to say from the day of election results till date, the way the setup is there, I think the Bank Nifty has reached to its extreme levels of 52,000. From here, we can see some consolidation between 52,000 and 51,000, maybe 50,500 on the downside. So 1,500 point kind of consolidation that we can see. And for Nifty also, I think it reached to its extreme levels of 23,600. So before moving towards the next levels, I am of the view that it is going to consolidate within the broader range. Today, you must have seen that almost all the private bank stocks did extremely well, but there was some a short covering kind of momentum was there, and we could see some correction in the near term. That's the overall view. So I'm of the view that if there is any correction around, let's say 23,200, then we should look for adding some long positions on Nifty. And for Bank Nifty, I think 50,500 or 700 is the area where, again, we should look for re-entry.
Okay, all right. Got that. Then 23,200, that's the important mark that Shrikant is looking at. Well, the first stock of the day is Indus Towers. The stock was down close to around 2% after Vodafone PLC sold nearly around 18% stake in the company. The group has raised close to around 15,000 crore rupees to the stake sale, and Vodafone PLC says that the proceeds from Indus Towers stake will be used to repay its existing lenders. Nimesh joins us to tell us what it means for Indus Towers as well as for a couple of other stocks. Nimesh?
Well, it means positive for Indus Towers, but first on the news, yes, indeed, Vodafone PLC has sold 18% stake via block deal today. It was done at the lower end of the price band, around 312, 315, and with that, they've raised close to $1.5 billion. Now, what it means for Indus Towers going forward, the fact that the Vodafone PLC has sold, the free float has gone up, which means there will be addition or the weight increase for passive investors. So both MSCI and FTSE are likely to increase the weight, which would mean that there will be inflows. As per some analysts, for MSCI, the inflow could be as high as $100 million. And in FTSE, the inflows could be close to $55 million. So net $150, $160 million of fresh inflow will come into Indus Towers over the next few days as and when those changes happen. So that's one thing. As far as the lenders are concerned, Vodafone PLC very clearly said that a large part of this money is going to get used to repay the debt or be repaid to the lenders. They will be still left with 3% stake in Indus Towers going forward. So that's what the big deal was. Vodafone PLC indeed sold 18%. Interestingly, from a buyer perspective, Bharti did confirm that they've bought 1% stake. The other buyers include some large domestic mutual funds and some FIs, which includes hedge funds as well. So some bit of disclosures will be interesting. But overall, 18% was sold by Vodafone PLC and 1% was bought by Bharti Airtel.
All right, thanks a lot for that, Nimesh. But Vodafone was not the only big trade that we saw today. There were other large block trades as well. They included Gland Pharma, ZF Commercial, and Sansera Engineering. Gland Pharma shares worth around 1,800 crore rupees change hands in a large trade that we saw. Sources say the Chinese promoter Fosun Pharma is likely seller. ZF Commercial promoter, that's Wapco Asia, also sold close to around 7.5% stake to institutional investors in a large block trade window, which saw close to around 14.45 lakh shares worth around 2,287 crore rupees changing hands. And finally, Sansera Engineering shares, they surged post a large trade, which is likely to be a clean out trade from a set of strategic investors.
Okay, let's talk about banks, which played catch up in today's trade in a big fashion. The Nifty Bank hit record highs, with the private banks being the biggest contributors. Abhishek has more details on the valuation picture of large private banks. So the big move finally started. Abhishek, what do the valuations say now?
Well, post-elections, Bank Nifty as of yesterday had slightly underperformed the Nifty. So if you take a look, as of yesterday, post-election, Nifty was up 7.7%, while Bank Nifty was up only 7.5%. So there was a gap with respect to the gains seen on these two indices. However, today, while Nifty was flat or a slightly decline of 0.2%, Bank Nifty was up about 1.8, 1.9% in trade today. So Bank Nifty has seen its valuations change on a price to book value multiple, so from 2.4 times that it was as of 4th of June to right now about 2.5 times. But there has been a huge change with respect to large lenders who have seen massive gains from election to now. So if you take a look, the top gainers from election to now has been SDFC Bank, IndusInd Bank and Axis Bank, all of them who have surged about 8 to 12% from election to now. Now the big picture on valuation, if you take a look, SDFC Bank, that valuation was below Kotak Mahindra Bank as on the election day. But today, with the rally that you have seen in SDFC Bank's valuation are slightly expensive or slightly better than that of Kotak Mahindra Bank. So all the top three private banks, that is SDFC Bank, ICICI Bank and Kotak Mahindra Bank, on a 1 year forward price to book value trade in the range of 2.5 times to 2.75 times. Back to you.
Okay, all right, Abhishek, got it. Thanks very much for putting that valuation table up there for reference. So yes, valuations are inching higher as the buying has really become in large blue chip banks. Let's move on and talk about the other big story of the day. Fertilizer stocks like Chambal Fertilizer, RCF, FACT, all of them surged between 5 and 7%. We are learning from sources that the Fitment Committee has recommended further deliberation over proposed GST cuts on fertilizers, as a blanket exemption could lead to duty inversion and a blocking of capital. Timsy is joining in with the latest on the story. So Timsy, even the thought, the prospects of some sort of a GST cut on fertilizers that really excited the stocks. So what are you picking up?
Well, that's right. What we are given to understand from sources that when it comes to the Fitment Committee nominated by the GST Council, they are actually now talking about the industry demand to cut rates, or to be precise, exempt GST on fertilizers from current 5% to nil. Now, this proposal actually was wriggled around in the Fitment Committee, and what we are given to understand is that Fitment Committee has recommended that this recommendation to reduce the GST from 5% to 0 is actually going to lead to a lot of inversion of duties, blocking of working capital. Thus, it should be appropriate for the group of ministers on rate rationalization to consider this request. Meanwhile, they also said there is a strong case that has been made by the Standing Committee on Chemicals and Fertilizers to reduce this rate. And not just this is on the proposal of the GST Council, rather certain inputs of the fertilizers such as ammonia, etc. Over there also the rates range between 12%, in certain cases it is 5%, in certain cases it is 18%. So there are three sort of brackets that Fitment Committee has recommended group of ministers on rate rationalization on the fertilizer window itself, that this exemption or this reduction in rates should be looked at only holistically after GOM on rate rationalization takes a view.
Okay, got it, Timsy. So that's on fertilizers. Now, a stock like Delta Corp was also very excited today. And that's because I think you're also picking up something on the retrospective applicability of the GST tax or the GST rate, right? So can you tell us what is happening here on this front?
Yes, as you rightly said, GST Council is likely to get a breather for the industry, where sectors which paid GST at lower rate versus that applied by GST authorities, that are likely to get relief from the retrospective action. GST Council may consider a proposal to not to levy higher GST when lower rate was paid by the industry, and that was a general practice that the industry was carrying out and not just one particular company per se. So GST Council may consider Law Commission's proposal to offer companies relief from the retrospective action for lower tax payout. Council is likely to consider not raising retrospective demands where industry paid lower GST rate in absence of clarity or where the rate was not specifically mentioned in black and white. Also, the amendment to the GST law is likely to not to allow refund of GST or cess arising in cases where higher demands of GST were paid, and now with this amendment there could be a lower rate. So over there no refunds are going to get done, and the amended law is likely, what experts say, could benefit sectors like online gaming, insurance, when it comes to other sectors like foreign shipping lines, foreign airlines, insurance company, etc. So there are many sectors who are likely to get the benefit of this. Just to lay down the procedure, Council is going to introduce Section 11A in the GST laws, which is likely to address this issue, and this is similar to what was Section 11C in the pre-GST regime in the central excise laws. So just replicating that law to be exercised as and when sector specific the council or the government feels that they would need to bring in amendment so that retrospective cases can be settled. So it is going to ease a lot of litigation, is what experts say.
Yeah, that's the hope. Timsi, thanks a lot for joining in and filling us in with all of those details. Well, Mayuresh, what do you make of this pack? You know, the online trading stocks, well, they have got absolutely bombed out. Delta is less than half of what it was 18 months or so ago. So would you look to buy into this if they're going to get relief on the retrospective basis? Then will you think that, you know, with the kind of balance sheet they have, the land bank they have, and they have a niche, would you bet on the stock? And also, if you could give us a quick view on any fertilizer name that you like.
So Nigel, I think if this is believed to be true, I think it will be a positive, because I think where the stock is now in terms of price, I think the worst is probably now getting penciled in terms of everything that the stock has gone through, retrospective tax, what happens in terms of the current tax regime, so on and so forth, including a player like Nazara Tech as well. So to that extent, again, I think it will be a big relief for players like this. But the big question is if. So I think it's really a punt that you're probably taking at this juncture, if you are taking any. And therefore, I think it becomes a high risk, high reward kind of a scenario. But I think the worst is probably priced in stocks like Delta and Nazara Tech. As far as the fertilizer pack is concerned, I think 2-3 things apart from what Timsi mentioned. I think one, with expectations of good monsoons around, expectations of decent volume growth is expected to take place. What you're actually looking at in terms of farm gate prices, ammonia prices have shot through the roof. So I think a lot of ammonia producers like RCF, like Chambal, will definitely benefit because prices at the end of June or in the month of June have actually been far, far better than the previous few months as well. The working capital cycle has got reduced, and with expectations in terms of some budgetary proposals still expected to continue for the sector as a whole, specifically in terms of DBT as a measure, the entire cash conversion cycle probably reduces. And third, I think integrated players will also benefit with lower input costs, specifically phosphoric acid prices. So apart from the factors, I think these factors also probably might aid out. RCF, Chambal might actually continue their momentum.
Okay, all right. Got that. Mayuresh, thank you very much. And Shrikant, good to have you on the show as well. Thanks for joining in and giving us perspective on the market and the individual stocks we've discussed. Well, let's move on with that and quickly get you the latest corporate commentary that we picked up today. In our corporate corner, we have Mishra Dhatu Nigam and LIC Housing. The management of Mishra Dhatu Nigam, or Midhani as the company is called, tells CNBC-TV18 that supplies to Pratt & Whitney have begun. The company anticipates a potential revenue of 15 crore rupees in the fourth quarter of FY25 and 60 crore rupees in FY26 from Pratt & Whitney. Further, the company guides for 23% revenue growth with margins around 25%. Meanwhile, the company's order book stands at 1,700 crore rupees.
Well, next, LIC Housing says that it had earlier disbursed 42,000 crore rupees under the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana and expects the scheme to be launched in a month's time. They also guide for AUM growth of 10 to 12% with a net interest margin of 2.7 to 2.9% for the coming fiscal, while the gross NPAs will be around 2%. Well, on that note, we'll take a short break. You come back with a popular segment, D-Street Chatter, along with all the top market events you need to track. Stay with us. Welcome back to Markets Forward. Well, as promised, it's time for our special segment, D Street Chatter. Nimesh joins us to get us an insight into D Street Chatter. Nimesh, what's on your radar?
Hi, Nigel. A day of consolidation on the Nifty, but it was the bank Nifty which actually outperformed thanks to some big buying interest in the private bank names in today's market. But in terms of individual stocks, the first stock is Shirley Engineering. Big move on that stock on large volumes. There was a large block, 5% equity got changed hands. I understand a domestic mutual fund was a buyer and a leading FPI was a seller. Even after today's block deal, the FPI will continue to own 5% in Shirley Engineering. The second stock is Ramkrishna Forging. That's been buzzing off late. In last 2 days, the stock is up 15%, large volumes as well. I understand the leading long-only fund is an active buyer in Ramkrishna Forging, and hence a big move in that stock. The third stock is All Cargo Gati. Well, the stock has been consolidating off late with a positive bias. Now I understand there's going to be a QIP very soon, and the company has got some commitments from some larger HNI, so that's something to track there. And the last name is Centec Realty. Well, the entire real estate name saw some profit booking. Centec actually bucked the trend and was higher in trade on large volumes. I understand the leading FI fund is an active buyer of late, and hence a big move in that stock as well, backed by FI buying.
Okay, all right, Nimesh, thanks a lot for that. And before we wrap up, let's get you all the key market events that you need to track for tomorrow's session. Sonal Bhutra joins us to help us out with that. Sonal.
Thank you so much for that. Let me start with some of the domestic cues and a lot of stocks that will be in focus tomorrow. In terms of Anman General meeting, there are a couple of these names that you should be on your radar. Himadri Specialty Chemicals, there's Rallis India, India Mart, Home First Finance and CI Automotive, to name a few. Two stocks will be going ex-dividend as well, eMudra and L&T. RBL Bank and Utkarsh SFB will have their investor day as well. And tomorrow at 11 a.m., we'll have some comments coming in from RBI Governor Shaktikanta Das as well. It will be the inaugural address at College of Supervisors, Mumbai. And in the global events, we'll have the interest rate decision in UK and some of the macro data that will come out in the US markets as well.
Okay, all right. Got that. Thanks very much for that, Sonal. So lots to watch out for tomorrow as well. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Markets Forward. Many thanks for watching. Do stay tuned. We'll be back after this break with more news and updates.